welcome to the JB Doula podcast. I'm Jessica Brown, a certified birth and postpartum doula serving families in southwestern Pennsylvania, and here we talk about all things birth, womanhood, and the childbearing years. Plenty still applies to our other parenting journeys such as dads, trans, and non-binary friends. And this episode we talk about how doulas trust in the birth process and how that helps them support you during birth. Before we get into it, just a polite request: if you are interested in what I'm talking about and want to learn more, please like, share, follow, and subscribe. I have my website, jbdoula.com. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at jbdoula and at jbdoula services. So yeah, after all that fun stuff, let's get into it. So, like I said for this episode, it is on how doulas trust in the birth process and how that helps them support you during birth. And this kind of sums up 3 of the 5 aspects of support that doulas provide, which is physical, emotional, and spiritual. But to be able to do that kind of support, there is this foundation of a doula, where it is this inherent trust in the birth process. And it's not just inherent of I believe things will happen for the best. It's that it's based in knowledge and experience. Part of our training and certification process, at least through DONA, is learning the parameters of quote unquote normal and the wide range of variety that is in birth. So that way things are less likely to take us by surprise, and we're able to provide that reassurance that yes, this is normal what you're feeling, and these are some things that are going on, and also to help with the information as well. If a doctor is saying we think you need to do this, kind of helping to make sure that you understand what this is. Is it Pitocin, an epidural, or is it saying that you're quote unquote failure to progress? Things like that. So we provide that information for you, but also that information is with us and helps us have this steady rock foundation of just yes, I do know what normal birth looks like and the wide variety that comes with it. And I'm aware of how it can twist and turn, and sometimes complications do happen. I'm familiar with that too. So that knowledge, and then also having, unlike medical providers where their focus is on the epidemiology, the things that can go wrong. That's because I love home birth. I love all of these things, and I want to promote physiological birth and all of this awesome, wholesome, rite of passage, intrinsic stuff. But I can't discount that doctors and hospitals, obstetricians, all of that, they have a purpose, and their purpose that they serve, at least in where I think birth should be going, is as this resource for high-risk births and complications and that epidemiology, the stuff that they have the experience, the specialty, and this wealth of knowledge and practice in, isn't things that are going wrong and managing that. For everything else, the lower risk and things that don't need the interventions, that's kind of where I have more of my foundation in and my expertise, so to speak. I wanted to title this Experts in Normal, which I think I mentioned in the previous podcast, but that's more of the midwife's role, if you have a midwife, is rather than being on the surgical aspect, the things that go wrong, and management of complications. Even though they are able to manage complications, the midwife is the expert in normal and the wide range of normal that comes with birth. And that allows them the security to be more hands-off and to allow you to move through this physiological process. So the doula is kind of in between these two worlds where, yes, I'm familiar with things that can lead to a cesarean, just like a midwife is. And why we would like to avoid that for these reasons, but if you want to do that, then that's fine. Or if that's what truly needs to happen with the doctor's opinion, then yeah, we do that. I'm not the medical professional. I'm not the one who's diagnosing you. I'm not the one making decisions for you. I just want to help make sure you get the information and all of the information that you need to make a decision. And I know I went into that with the last podcast too, and I just can't emphasize it enough, where it's informed consent sometimes isn't informed enough, where they're giving you just enough information to say yes to what they're saying. And I'm trying to make sure to ask deeper questions, and before birth, during prenatals, having an idea and framework of what your values are and what your goals are for birth, Because if you don't want a lot of interventions, then we really need to know, like, all right, well, then how are we going to cope with this? How are we going to work through that stuff? And that'll go into how I support you in a little bit. But yes, it's having this trust that birth is a process, and it is one that our bodies are more than capable of doing. Yes, we have high-risk situations, we have complications, and we have things that require the skills of an obstetrician and surgery. But these things are very rare. Like, they aren't as common as it seems. Like, our cesarean rate of over 20%, I think going on 30, you'll have to check that for a future podcast. But it's very high, and it's higher than the recommended a couple points above or below 10%. That's recommended by the World Health Organization. So it's this really tricky thing of just like, yes, these complications happen and we need to take care of those, but it's also like, I trust the process. If we let you have the space and the time and give you the tools and the knowledge you need, then you can do this. You can move through this birth process, and I'll help you every step of the way. I'll provide that physical, emotional, and spiritual support to help get you through these things. Especially if you're not familiar with birth. Like, during the prenatals, I'll be doing that educational support and helping prepare you and preparing you for these tools and the physical and emotional aspect. And that way, during birth, you can be in the moment, present from moment to moment and all that stuff. And having that mindfulness and attention to, this is the contraction, now it's done. This is the next one. Instead of being super worried about what's coming up next, or are they going to feel like this the whole time? Are they going to, I don't know if I can handle them if they keep getting stronger. It's like, well, they do get stronger, but they also get shorter, this and that. And your body prepares you too. If you're not having interventions like synthetic oxytocin or Pitocin, or anything else to like augment or interfere with labor, your brain naturally, with the oxytocin that produces naturally, also has like the endorphins, where it's, yes, the contractions are stronger, but also your ability to cope with it is stronger too. So I trust in that. If you are given the tools, the resources, and the support that you need, more often than not, you should be able to have like this physiological birth with minimal interventions if that's what you want. And because again, it's like, I'm not trying to decide what your birth looks like, but I want to give you the tools and the information so you can make that choice for yourself. And so you're aware, because you may go in wanting that natural vaginal birth where there is you don't use any narcotics or epidurals, and you don't want a cesarean. But sometimes things can be surprising, and if you go in too soon, your doctor might then think that you're taking too long to progress, even though it's not true. You just went in very early. And that's the other thing, is trying to prepare you so you don't go into the birth location too early. We want to give you all of the best options and tools and resources to help you achieve the birth that you're looking to have, while also preparing you for things that can come up, so you're not blindsided, because sometimes things do happen. And then we have this model of safety from the hospitals and doctors and obstetricians with their surgery diagnostics and things, like, because sometimes these things do happen and then we do need them and they're there. But I don't think that we start there. I think having this trust that, yes, you, your body, and your baby know how to birth, and you can birth. You're more than capable of birthing. And you don't need it to be super medicalized, and it isn't just another day for you. So once we kind of like have this groundwork of trust in the process, trust in the birth process, which I try to extend to you and your partner, because that matters too. If you believe you can do this, you probably can. Like, yes, something might come up, but like, you also be able to handle that too. And then we can move into this physical, emotional, spiritual support, which starts during the prenatals. We form that like woman to woman or person to person connection of just like, I'm going to be with you through this. We're in this together. Like, you get the continuous support. There is no shift change for me. Like, I'm with you from the start of your labor to the end. I usually would come with you once you hit active labor, when you're going to your birth location. So when the contractions are too much to handle on your own anyways, or handle with just your partner, and it's time to leave your home, or to have the midwife come over. And from there, it's meeting you where you're at. And that's like physically what pain you're feeling, where you're feeling it. And emotionally, are you scared? Are you feeling scattered? Do you need to be grounded? Do you want distracted and like to have some laughs and just be like easygoing during this first part of it? Like, what is it that you're looking for? And then to also the spiritual being here, witnessing the birth like I did with mediation, but being like your witness, but also holding your space with you. And especially as things pick up and the contractions or surges take all of your focus, I'm with you each breath, I'm with you each surge, and I move with you, I adjust to what you need, and I help your partner kind of find that rhythm with you too, because it's that relaxation ritual and rhythm. So we want you to relax between contractions, during if you can, but that's hard. It's hard work what you're doing with these surges and everything. But relaxing between the contractions, and that's with like the physical, emotional, and spiritual support, that's there too. And then during the contraction, it's finding out what your rhythm is. Is it that you have to get up as soon as your contraction starts to then lean on your partner and like forehead to his chest or her chest and having me rub your lower back and just like squatting down into this contraction. And then when it's done, backing up and like maybe fan to cool you off, or the cool towel, or some water. And then it becomes a ritual, because if you're doing that multiple times, like we move with you. We're like, oh, another one's starting. So we get into position and we work together to help serve your purpose of being in this moment, being supported. And then if things change, we adjust from there too. So something that might have helped during early labor, like bouncing on the birth ball, and chit-chatting, laughing, joking, and all of that stuff, and maybe even eating and drinking some water and everything, or your labor aid. That might change, and usually will, as labor gets more intense and requires your focus. So now we adjust to you. And if your partner might not recognize the cues, because again, like this is new to them too. More often than not, the partner is like, yes, they may have gone to the child education class, but that's a lot of knowledge to learn really quickly. Like you have 9 months, and not even the whole 9 months if you didn't know you were pregnant right away. So it's not a lot of time when like I've spent years, your doula has spent years preparing for being your doula. We've read all this information, we've attended classes, we've had experience with their labors, and we trust in this process of birth, and not necessarily natural birth, just trust in the process of your body's ability to birth. Like, yes, you may need extra help getting it going if it's slowed down, and maybe the pain is too much, and you're really tired, and you do want that epidural so you can rest. The birth still has a process. Like, we want to help you achieve the one that you are aiming for. So even if you have an epidural and you still want a vaginal birth, like, we have things we can do to help make sure you have that, or at least give you a better chance, because with an epidural, sometimes it's more likely you'll have a cesarean. But we're going to try our best to give you the tools and resources and just help you move through this, because you still need support even with an epidural. Like, you shouldn't be left alone. You can still have pain, you can still be uncomfortable, and we don't want you sitting in the same spot. You're going to have more chances of prolonged back pain after labor if you just lay on your back the entire time. And your baby's more likely to slip posterior and like just not move down. So we try different positions, we move you around, and we stay with you. We're with you through this process. We make eye contact. If you want to be held, we'll hold you. If you need a drink, we'll go get it for you. And if you have questions, we answer them. So that's kind of this, it's hard to just separate physical, emotional, and spiritual support from each other, because they kind of feed into it. They flow in and out to what you need in the moment. So yes, like the physical support is the one that I think is most well known and advertised. It's those hip squeezes, the counter pressure, just having like those massages and all of these things, and using skin, like the gate theory on your skin to help cope with pain. And that's like tangible, so you see it and it's like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense, that's super helpful. But it's like emotional and spiritual are so big on it too. Like, we are with you, and what you feel is valid, what you're experiencing is valid, including fear and anger and uncertainty or sadness. Like, a lot of things can come up during the birth process. beyond just the fact that you are having a baby, you're creating family, and you're expanding, you're changing. You can have past trauma or like past fears come up. It's your body remembers all of these things that your life has gone through. And birth is just such a huge transformative transition in life that a lot of things can just bubble up. And if you weren't prepared for it, or if you might not even be sure if these things were going to come up at all, your doula is like, yeah, this is normal. What you're feeling, you're experiencing, like, yes, like let's process this together. Let's work through this with you together, because you definitely don't want to just be off on your own, processing the fact that you kind of have a fear of being a mom, or you have like a deep fear of abandonment because of your own experiences from your childhood. And how is this going to translate to you being a parent and with your baby? And it's just like, I'm here with you, and you are safe, and you are going to be a great parent, and you're okay. And it's like, yes, like let's breathe through this, and let's try to release some of the stuff that your body has been holding. So it's not as well known that the doula kind of has this not even little, but like this almost secret role of, let me sit with you in the trenches of the torrential overflow of emotions and memories and fears and concerns. Like, I've got you. Like, I'll be your rock through this storm. It's okay. Or your lighthouse, if you prefer that imagery, where it's just like, yes, things are tumultuous and stormy, and it's hard to see, and it's hard to see the end of this process either, where you have a baby and the pain is done and you're recovered and you're going through parenthood, because you're in the thick of it right now. And it's just like, let me help you be a light to guide your way. Like, I won't dictate what your birth looks like. I won't tell you what you need to do, but I'll work with you to find out what it is that you look for in birth, what your values are, and kind of help guide you to that in case you need it. Because it's easy to feel lost and overwhelmed and scared during birth. It's a lot of things, even without the emotional bubble up of just memories and feelings and things, or trauma. It's uncertain, because you may have had this birth plan, which I really recommend, like a birth vision, where you develop a toolkit of things to use and have a flexibility mindset of like, yes, like this might work now, and then that one might not work later, and that's okay. But I have all of these things, this repertoire to draw from. So you may have had like a more like rigid expectation of how birth will look. And it can be really overwhelming and startling and like downright scary if your birth doesn't match that, because we're also told, especially with the medical birth model, is this bell curve of just like, the obstetricians and doctors and nurses are taught that birth kind of follows this line. Like, you should fall within these parameters. You should dilate a centimeter an hour once you hit active labor. And it's just like, that's an average. That's an average of a lot of births. And there's tons of outliers that are still within the healthy normal range. And there's a lot going on. That's a lot of pressure to try to live up to, and think that you're then failing at birth, saying they're slow to progress. But it's like, no, you're not. You are progressing. Your body has to do more than dilate. Your baby needs to come further down to move out. Your cervix needs to thin or efface, as well as move forward. Your cervix starts back here posterior, moves forward anterior. You have all of these changes that need to happen, as well as being allowed to move and be upright. If they're keeping you in bed to be monitored, like, gravity's working against you and your baby. So getting you upright and getting you comfort measures to like maybe put you in the bathtub or in the shower to help relieve the pain you're feeling, that also keeps you upright, and making sure you get up to go to the bathroom. All of these things can help encourage your baby to move down and out, and that process also helps your baby open your cervix, thin it, open it, dilate, all of that stuff. Think flower, open like a flower. It's just a very like intense flower sometimes. And accepting that like birth might not be what you thought it was going to be. Maybe you were really like anticipating a lot of pain, and then in your preparation for it, you realize like the expectation of pain that I thought I was going to have never came. So that's a relief. And on the converse side, you might have been like, I'll be fine. I'm not worried at all. And you're like, oh, this is a lot more intense than I thought. And maybe I'm like becoming afraid and tight, which makes it more intense. So having your doula there, that's the kind of like emotional, physical, and spiritual combined, where it's recognizing that you're afraid and you're tight, and it's getting more intense because you're afraid and tight, and being like, keep it loose and keep it low. None of this high-pitched screaming in like high-pitched tones. We want to have it, if you're going to vocalize, bring it low and deep diaphragm, like ooh, all of that stuff, because that loosens you and also opens you. So it's recognizing where you're at, meeting where you're at, and then trying to help guide you home to where you are in a comfortable place. You're still going to have contractions and surges and it will be uncomfortable, but in a comfortable enough place that you're managing what you're feeling. You're like, I have this, feeling capable and confident of this birth process, because I want you to trust in the process too. And so we touched on physical and emotional and spiritual. It doesn't have to be esoteric. It doesn't have to be we share the same faith and we do active prayers or chants together. We can if you want. I'm not opposed to it. I don't have to share your faith to do that for you. And on the other side, you could be secular. You may have no faith. You may be an atheist or agnostic or what have you. Or you may not be comfortable sharing your beliefs with me or sharing them in the birth space that you're going to be at, such as a hospital. So kind of meeting where you're at there, in that regardless of faith or no faith or this and that, the foundation is like we're person to person. Like we're all human and we're sharing this birth space together. I know I've shared it on my Instagram and stuff, that it's just like we are in this together. And whether you identify as woman and we're woman to woman or we're person to person, this is where we are. We are in this present moment. We are grounded together and we are going to get through this together. And I want to help you have the best experience possible, so that way you can remember this for years down the road, and it being positive and satisfying and empowering. Because there's been studies done that parents remember the birth. And it may seem surprising, but what sticks out the most clearly is an emotional aspect of how you felt and how you were treated during birth. So if you had someone that was belittling and condescending and making you feel like you had no control over your body and the experience of what's going on, like yes, sometimes an emergency cesarean needs to happen. You don't need to be blindsided, and you don't need to feel like you have no control over your body. We can still have this be family-centered, and you be a part of it and still come out, even if you intended a vaginal birth, with a cesarean, still come out feeling like you had a positive experience, that you were part of this rite of passage and this transformation and transition, all of these fun things, that you were a part of it. And that this wasn't just something that happened to you, because you are happening to this. This is a thing involving you, your partner, your baby, like this transformative family moment. This isn't just another day. Like your birth matters, your experience matters, and your perception of the birth and your feelings and experience of it will last. Like you will feel those things 15, 20 years down the road acutely. You may not remember the nurse's name that was nasty to you, but you remember that, like, I really felt really, really bad, and like I feel like things went downhill after so and so just said, like, oh, you're still this many centimeters, or why aren't you doing this, and just making you self-conscious and doubt and all of these things, rather than I just remember looking into my partner's eyes during contractions, and that they were always there when I needed them, and I had someone with me the whole time, and I felt safe, I felt secure, I felt like I could handle this and that I could do anything, and I was excited to meet my baby. It's very different what you could be feeling. And I'm not saying that you will have a bad experience if you don't have a doula, but there is studies showing that you're less likely to have interventions, and you're more likely to have positive feelings, a sense of pride in what you accomplished and how you managed birth. Like you're like, yeah, I did handle that really well, and whether I had drugs or epidural or not, I rocked it. I did awesome. And also just a more positive overall experience of the birth is more likely with a doula. as well as overall birth satisfaction and increased levels of bonding with your baby, feeling that your baby is beautiful, wonderful, smart, awesome, and prolonged breastfeeding. Like, you're more likely to breastfeed longer when you have a doula and less likely to need interventions or a cesarean. So it's these less likelies and more likelies. Like, I cannot guarantee these things, but I can increase your chances of having them. And yes, you are capable of having them without me. But I'd love to be there. I'd love to help you have the birth of your dreams, and just to feel that empowerment, and I'm capable of anything, and greeting your baby and welcoming your family, expanding, like all of this. I love being a part of that, and I really want to support that in that space. And I think that's kind of that spiritual aspect of it, because it is like this person to person witnessing and holding space with you and respecting you, making sure you're seen, heard, respected, and that you're just not left alone to struggle with the fears and anxieties and stuff. So yeah, I trust in the process of birth because I trust in you, your body, and your baby. I want you and your partner to trust in you, your body, and your baby's ability to be born. And I help prepare your partner with the tools of physical, emotional, and spiritual support too, because it's like it's your person to person too. Looking into each other's eyes, spiritual support, 100%. Emotional, spiritual, physical, the whole thing. It's a deep connection. That's the spiritual, I suppose. Whether it's secular or faith-based, it's connection. And being present and grounded and mindful, all those things. I just get so excited. Anyways, but yes, trusting in this process of birth, your ability and capability to birth, and helping you feel that too. And that allows me, like, the space, the emotional and physical and mental capacity to then be super present with you and able to troubleshoot when things aren't working, to try something different, and recognizing when we need to do something different, where it's seeing that, like, you're looking tight and scared. Like, let's loosen you, relax you, find out what is this just a fear of pain? Are you feeling pain? Or is there something else going on? Just this intuitive movement with you, flowing to see what you need and meeting where you're at. I'm not sure if there's anything else without just being redundant, but it is. I think it's really important. And to do that, to have that trust in the process, you also need those first two aspects of support, which was the informational support. We prepare you so you know what your options and choices are, and so you have a foundation for informed consent, informed choice if things do come up. If interventions are recommended, you can decide. And the interpersonal support, where it's that mediation, protecting your space to get all the information, me asking questions if you aren't sure, if you need to know more about the pros, cons, alternatives, benefits, risks, all those things with interventions, and then protecting your space to then have that alone time with either yourself, your partner, or all three of us, where you decide what it is you want to do without having your provider there overlooking what your choice is and influencing you, because sometimes they only give you enough information to say yes to what they want you to do. And I want to make sure you get all the information, so if you say yes, you don't feel later that you were lied to or manipulated. That you're like, no, like, I understood and I still chose it, and that's okay, because this is your birth and it matters. So doing that, having that set up ahead of time, trying to get you to a point of trusting the process, because I trust in the process, it then allows me to move through this process with you, moment to moment, with physical, emotional, and spiritual support. So I hope that was pretty clear, maybe not concise, but if you have any more questions, definitely you can hit me up on my website or Facebook, Instagram, or even YouTube. Give a comment. And next time will be the wrap up of the What is a Doula series. There'll be a little summary of all the things we talked about, also a little bit of the things I might have forgot to add in, such as what a doula doesn't do, just to really clarify, because I keep getting questions about confusing me with a midwife. I'm like, no, I want to be one, but we do very different things. Some things overlap, but for one, I'm not a medical provider, and that's the big one. And we'll talk more about that in the next one. Again, thank you so much for listening. If you liked what I had to say, if you're interested and want to learn more, or you think someone else could benefit from it, like, share, subscribe, and follow. YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and you can hit me up on my website if you're interested in services or being on the podcast for an interview. I'm really looking forward to starting interviews for birth stories with moms and parents, as well as promoting local businesses that support families during the childbearing year. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to that, and we'll talk soon. Happy birthing.